in Montgomery County Public Schools in Maryland. It is the largest school district in the state of Maryland. They are under fire for proposing during the middle of a pandemic a policy that would serve cold food to students who had, quote, lunch debt. The draft policy, which was to be brought before the school board next week, was first proposed in 2019. And it comes from the federal memo, which instructs school food authorities to create a policy for meal debts. I want to read from the Bethesda magazine. The first quote says the following: the proposed MCPS policy says families that do not qualify for federal free and reduced price meal programs, but have lunch debt of more than $35 would get, quote unquote, alternative meals, usually a sandwich rather than a hot meal, until the debt is paid. Now, this doesn't include students who are on free and reduced lunches, but it absolutely puts those students who are in the gap. They aren't poor enough to get free and reduced lunches, but they certainly aren't wealthy enough. They don't have enough income, their parents don't, to be able to afford school lunches. And there are quite a few Americans who have firsthand experience with that. And the idea itself of lunch debt is pretty disgusting, but it is something that is persistent across the country. According to the original reporting, Montgomery Public Schools is merely responding to a federal memo. And this is what the federal memo says from the USDA. The purpose of this memorandum is to address the need for school food authorities participating in the Food and Nutrition Service, National School Lunch Program, and School Breakfast Program to institute and clearly communicate a meal charge policy, which would include, if applicable, the availability of alternative meals. And here's the thing, they came under so much fire that they pulled this back and they've decided not to present the policy, but it is still on memorandum from 2016 from the federal government for schools to address the school debt issue. Here's the problem. Again, there are 135 schools in MCPS, according to the reporting, with more than 250 in unpaid meal fees, according to the program's website. 6 schools have more than $10,000 in meal debts. The data showed roughly 8,000 students who owed a total of about $62,320 in September of 2019, compared with nearly 16,000 students owing $365,000 in January of 2020. 75% of school districts, reporting to the School Nutrition Association, had unpaid meal debt ranging from $10 to $500,000. And I don't know if that number, if you average it out across the nation, sounds extremely large to someone in the audience, but just take in consideration the size of our defense budget, $721 billion a year that is spent on war. So we literally have the case, Cenk and Charles, of we have money for guns, but not butter, to use a classic economic comparison. And so they're under fire, Cenk. My question really is this memo has been on the books, and instead of us addressing it from the federal level, and instead of us using just the smallest amount of money to address this so that meals can be free at school in the first place, they are instituting, or they're trying to institute, these policies across the country to give students cold meals instead of hot food.
Yeah, I'm a little mixed on this, and you might be surprised by that, but I'm trying to figure out how to do this right, because I want everybody to be clear. The people who qualify for free lunches, or the kids, are still getting them, so that's good, right? And so this is for the folks who do not qualify, but are not paying. Now, there's very good reasons why people can't pay sometimes, especially during the COVID emergency, and people run out of money, they lose their jobs, on and on and on. But it's gone up from 8,000 to 16,000 folks in a short period of time, and this is just in one county. I feel like instead of saying some people get to not pay, some people have to pay, and some people are in the middle, we should have some sort of holistic policy. And I don't think this is it, but I can see some people's frustrations at, hey, wait, if they don't have to pay, why do I have to pay? If I'm right next to them in the economic ladder, And so I think it's a complicated issue. I know in my time, and just because it happened in the past doesn't make it right by a long shot, but we didn't have that, right? So if you didn't have money for lunch, then you couldn't get it on credit. So now you can get it on credit, and that's why these are piling up. So Charles, I don't know how to resolve it, and I don't know that there is a good answer here, but what's your take on it?
Call me an idealist, say that I'm someone who is thinking in the clouds, but for the richest nation on the planet to be in a space that they are saying, we are not able to provide similar meals to accommodate the needs of young people in our system, or we want to create basically this class structure or this tier of lunches for kids in a way that will frankly compromise their dignity, will lead to them being bullied, will have deep psychological effects on them, and ultimately be a distraction in the school space, to me is just wrong and problematic. I mean, the need to have a policy is understandable. The need to figure out the situation so that you understand that, those who have a responsibility or an obligation have to fulfill that is fine. But I don't think that the method or the answer is to exact that on the kids, because they're the ones that are actually going to feel the brunt of that. If it comes out that this is part of money that you owe the state in terms of your taxes or something like that, I don't know that I have the answer necessarily. And like I said, I'm not trying to speak too highly in the clouds. But what I will say is that, again, from a psychological standpoint, from a dignity standpoint, we can't have these things exist in the same space. Like, you can't say that you want kids to be able to go into educational environments where they feel safe and supported and they're not bullied and they don't have these sorts of issues around their dignity and their integrity, and then have them standing in a line where somebody gets pizza and then somebody else gives them a ham sandwich, so that everybody in the cafeteria knows, oh, you must be poor, your family's paying their bill. I just don't think that that's the way to go. Again, because of the other methods and other pathways, if you will, and Ben talked about this, that we spend money on in terms of the federal government, I feel like there has to be a better way for us to solve this problem that doesn't necessarily expose our young people to such a harmful and problematic existence in our school system. That's the concern for me. The concern is like what the impact ultimately is on these young people, because they're the ones that have to deal with, what that feels like in space when they go to school every day. And there's already enough that they have to contend with. So, from that aspect, despite me understanding that the very real dollars and cents elements that are involved, ultimately, it's a no for me. We have to figure out a different way. There's got to be a better way that doesn't put our kids at emotional and psychological risk.
Yeah, I can, in Georgia, for a family of four, for you to qualify for free lunch, a family of four, you need to make less than $32,000 a year. The bar to get free lunch is extremely low. Like, that's real poverty for a family of four to be trying to survive on about $32,000 a year. But if you make $35,000 a year, that doesn't make you any more qualified to be able to pay for the school lunches every day. And growing up, that's the category I fell in. We were just enough to not qualify for free and reduced, but not enough to be able to not get that embarrassment that you're talking about, Charles. So I identify with this very personally. I know that there's a lot of families, a lot of students who find themselves in that gap. And Cenk, you're absolutely right. It can create resentment, especially if you're not tuned in to the fact that this is systemic. So of course, in high school and middle school, you're not thinking about the systemic problem. You're just thinking about the fact that, yeah, I'm embarrassed because back then we didn't even get any food, right? Like you mentioned, Cenk, we didn't get any food. We just sat there and maybe got some French fries off of our neighbor. The thing is that if education is the investment that the United States pretends that it is, and that it actually is, but the United States clearly doesn't consider that at the level of importance that it really plays in our society, it should not be that we have student debt, lunch debt, especially when it's less than a rounding error. I mean, if you compare this to any other federal program, we're talking about pennies, like less than in terms of the budget, for them to fix this and to correct this so that there's an even playing field across the board, it wouldn't take anything for the federal government to do it, but we don't have the willpower to do that.
Yeah, so let me say the last couple of things here. We talked about other policies and how it could affect things. You know, the $32,000 is actually more than the mom and the dad working minimum wage jobs full-time the whole year. In the state of Georgia, minimum wage is $7.25 because it's the federal minimum wage. And so we have poverty wages. If you work full-time, both parents, you're still not even gonna make it to $32,000. So if you fix the wages, you'll fix this problem. There are much better fixes, in my opinion, to this. There's one portion of this that is clearly wrong. If you owe money, if the kid's parents owe money, if he goes up to with a hot lunch, they take it away from him and then give him the cold lunch at that time. No, don't do that. That's crazy. Everybody agrees that's crazy, right? And so, on the other hand, I'm missing the. I don't know if it's a matter of privilege or whatever, but the difference between the hot lunch and the cold lunch, because I prefer the sandwiches. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's a big difference. And when you're in grade school,
yeah,
you know what it is? It's the forced distinction without the choice, right?
Yeah.
So like, and kids will see that. And I think that for me, you know, I don't want to get super touchy-feely on this, Cenk, but I do think that when you're at that age, you don't want to be that kid.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be that kid, right? And so, you know, it's one thing to say, I prefer the sandwich. It's another thing to literally have it taken away from you because, yeah, your parents didn't pay your bill. And kids, you know, and that's already tough. Kids, you know, have enough indicators in today's world about where they fall on the social stratosphere. They don't need another one in form of like their school lunch to tell them that, you know, their parents and their family may be struggling.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
Jake, real quick before we go to break, I just have that sensation of being in a store and waiting to see if your debit card goes through. That I remember that feeling as an adult because I had that feeling as a child, and I know that we should not be putting children in a place where they have to look at the little device that tells them whether or not they have enough money to eat and have that embarrassment on top of the pressure of looking at that device to see if it's going to clear that charge. So yeah, I think we're doing our kids a huge disservice here.
Yeah, the privilege that I have in this case is being thick-skinned and growing up kind of a big, strong kid. Because I had that feeling that you're talking about, Ben, as an adult. I went into poverty as an adult.
Last week.
Right. But as a kid, you know, when the other kids.
I will not confirm nor deny how recent.
So as a kid though, when other kids made fun, like, oh, Thanksgiving, you guys eat your own family? Ha ha, gobble, gobble, you turkeys, whatever, right? I just look at them like, you sure you want to make that comment to me? Usually they would retract. They would retract the comment. So look, I had the privilege of being a big, strong kid. So that not everybody has that, right? So I get it. Let's fix this and let's fix it at the root cause as well. Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.